All right, this is the follow up, and we are following up today on a live video I did not too long ago, which featured my good friend Ted Gould, and the video was entitled Uptown Mardi Gras Morning. My guest today on the follow up for the second time, can you give it up for the one and only Branford Marsalis? Branford, thank you so much.
Ooh,
Yes, yes, no, no,
ooh.
no, absolutely not. No, no, no.
Oh yeah.
Branford, thank you so much for making yourself available. Welcome to the follow up again.
Pleasure, George.
All right. So listen, we're talking about Uptown Mardi Gras morning. We're talking about New Orleans, and I thought one of the best guests that I could possibly have is Branford Marsalis himself, being from New Orleans and a great jazz player, great musician, great educator. Who better to explain the sound of that particular city? Branford, it might seem like a dumb question to ask you, but let me just put it out there. New Orleans, what's the first thing? New Orleans sound, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Um, there's like three or four or five different sounds.
Okay, go for it.
There's no one sound
Right,
really,
right,
but there's things that New Orleans people do. That's how we know, they're from New Orleans.
right, right.
We have this thing which we probably got from the Cubans because in the Atlantic slave trade, New Orleans was the first point of entry for slavery in the United States.
Right,
One of them,
right,
particularly in the South. And they would stop along the way and pick up slaves from Haiti and pick up slaves from Jamaica and from Cuba and all these Africans in these places that started to forge these new musical sounds
right,
rooted in the traditions of their grandparents or their great grandparents.
right.
And then suddenly they were in New Orleans, and so all of these sounds were uh, kind of blending in.
Mm,
And there are certain sounds where we know, if the drummer plays a hard accent on the fourth beat of the bar,
right.
of the fourth beat of the bar, yeah, every four bars, it's like, oh, that's a New Orleans cue,
Mm, check that out.
bang. It's like, oh wait,
Yeah,
whoa, wait, or somebody who studied in New Orleans, because it happened to me once in Copenhagen.
right.
The
What?
drummer was playing and he did it, and I turned around and then he laughed and then I laughed and he said, yeah, man, I lived in New Orleans for 2 years and I studied
Mm,
with the cats, with Bob French and the cats, and so it's a New Orleans thing.
that's so
And
cool.
it's just little rhythms,
Right.
little things like this thing, you know you
Right.
Africans play it, Caribbean peoples play it.
Right.
You hear it in soca, you hear it in merengue, you hear it in you know
And
uh
it definitely it just
yeah,
made its way into the city, into
yeah,
the fabric via the
yeah,
people. I mean,
yeah.
what you're saying, not to cut you off or anything, but
No, man, it's
you know
fine.
what you are saying is which kind of resonates with me a lot is that a place is its people, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Well, that's the in jazz, we're always having this argument. The perpetual argument is well, my argument is that there's an overabundance of harmony
mm,
in the study of the music,
mm,
and the biggest problem with harmony, regardless of the style of music you're talking about, is
right.
that it's culture neutral.
Check that out.
And music is not culture neutral,
Mm,
so it is never just a G7.
right. Right.
And I was having this argument once at a one of these things, these these seminars, jazz, the International Association of Jazz Educators, a convention. That's what
Right.
it is,
Right.
convention.
Right.
And I was saying that, and all the other panelists were like, "Nah, nah, man, harmony is the thing."
Oh wow.
So, because that's what they know,
Right.
that's their thing. So, at the end of towards the end of the session, one of the educators said, "What would you play on?" It was one of those kind of chords like G major 7 sharp 9 flat 13 chord.
Mm,
And then one panelist says, "Oh, I would play this. I could play that." Of course, The lawnmowers would start when but it's cool.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah.
This is
It's
what it
live.
is. It's
It's
all
live.
good.
So, I would play this scale, or you could do this, or I tried to go for the substitution, flat five substitution, blah blah blah. And I said, well, it depends on what the band's playing.
Oh.
And it was just like right at that moment,
Yeah.
it's like everything that we had been arguing about. Like I could tell by the energy of people in the room. They were like, "Oh yeah, now we get it." And then I just said, because like we talk all the time about, 2 minus 7 to 5 7 to 1. Well, okay, great.
Right.
5 7 is not a universal sound.
Right. It isn't.
Like how you play 5 7 with Art Farmer.
Right.
It's not how you play 5 7 with James Brown.
Yeah.
It's a dominant chord.
Yeah.
You don't even play dominant chords on Broadway the same way you play it in R&B or in rock and roll. The sounds are totally different.
Right.
And I think that music is not culture neutral.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I have to admit, and this is somewhat of an embarrassing thing to say, but coming back to our last conversation about Bring On the Night, you are somewhat how shall I put this? You sparked a little bit this a continuing thread that's going through George's Space Chat, and that is the regionality of African American music, right? In the movie, you speak to that very, very distinctly. You being from New Orleans, somebody from Philadelphia probably may not understand what you're talking about at times, right?
Right.
And
I didn't know I said that. Did I spark people? I'm sorry.
You sparked it. You just, totally.
I mean, I
it just came out that way, right?
Well, I just think, like there's so much racial baggage in our country.
Yeah, that's true.
And the entire country since its inception has been codified by race.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Americans were considered for political purposes 3/5 of a person.
Right.
So it's been here since the Constitution.
Right.
So someone who is sensitive to that might think that I'm saying that because of the way their brain works. It's kind of like reading a text message.
Right.
If someone writes an ironic text message to a person who doesn't know irony, then they think that it's angry.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been Black my whole life. I know a lot of Black people. All Black people don't have a musical spark in them. All Black people don't have that originality. Exactly. So it is not some kind of like, pissing contest where we have originality and you do not.
No.
But at the same token, it's hard to imagine American music without the African American contribution to it.
Of course.
I mean, there are no African Americans in Australia.
Yes.
There are no African Americans in Kenya.
Yes.
And they have a very dynamic sound and music, and they've taken their music and adapted it to electronic instruments.
Right.
In all of these, I don't even want to call them countries really, but all these tribes, all these people have these dynamic musics that they have created. I mean, the Jamaicans created ska and then reggae, and then there's soca over here, and there's bombi plena in Puerto Rico, and there's all these different, the zouk music in Guadeloupe, Martinique.
Yeah.
I mean, this is incredible, where the central figure in all of these things is the introduction of Africans to Europeans and native peoples.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's the combination of the three.
Yeah.
Africans, Americans, and Indians.
Right.
These three things seem to be the sound of the new world. And everywhere that there was this new sound and this new idea, those three entities were present.
Yeah, most definitely. And, coming back to New Orleans and the sound of New Orleans, there you have it. Those
Africans, Europeans, and Indians.
There you go. That is, that is a fantastic way to bring it to a point. I'm
sorry that upsets people, but I'm not making this shit up. So
there's nothing here. There's nothing.
And I don't have an agenda.
Exactly. I
don't have an agenda. I'm not trying. I'm not a Black nationalist. I don't have an agenda. But that makes them mad. Okay, well, let's go play golf.
Knowing full well I do not play golf, but anyway.
Not you, but
Yeah,
whoever's mad. I'm like, hey,
exactly.
let's go play golf, whatever, man. I'm sorry. So anyway, yeah, sorry
Either
about
way, but my next question, was going to be, and that kind of ties in with what you just talked about, the influence of Mardi Gras Indians, Black Indians, to the influence of those tribes
that.
on the New Orleans sound, right? It was always like, I didn't even, I mean, growing up, I grew up in Vienna, Austria, so we certainly did not know anything about that
Right,
particular culture, or,
right,
I learned about that many, many years later
right,
after I moved here.
yeah,
And then I saw it live in New Orleans.
right,
Uh, and of course, fascinating. Part of my family, part of my heritage is Native American. My great grandmothers on my father's side were both Native Americans. It's something that is close to me.
right.
Nevertheless, that particular lineage and that particular history in New Orleans was completely lost on me. I was wondering, what in your opinion, in your knowledge, in your experience, in it seems stupid to say that, but in your life, what was the influence of the Mardi Gras Indians? Was there something? Was it somewhere in your household? Was it in your life?
No, we didn't come from that side. Donald Harrison is a guy you can talk to. He's an alto
Oh,
player. He
oh yeah.
his people. He's actually a big chief now.
Oh, check
He
that
would he
out.
would know that story better than me. But living there
Mm,
and going to watch the Indians play, watch the Wild Chapatulas do their thing,
right,
and hanging out and watching Big Chief Tootie Manjuri and all of that. I mean, it has an effect on you.
right.
But the story is, the legend is, I don't know about the veracity of it, but I know that it's a real thing. A lot of a lot of slaves that escaped plantations went and lived with the Indians.
Right. Right.
And there were some places, not New Orleans specifically, some places where where the Indians owned slaves.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Cherokee owned
Yeah.
slaves. And then once the Civil War was over, the Cherokee said that, well, these slaves can actually be a member of our tribe. They
Okay.
spoke the language, they understood the customs, and they just stayed.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that New Orleans was that kind of place where you had these French people living on top, these Spanish people living on top, these Native Americans, and black people, and it was just it's a and let's not forget the Sicilians, because
Oh wow.
there was a Jeopardy question last year, and Alex Trebek said the place in America where one is most likely to hear Brooklynese. And my wife said New York, 'cause she's from New York. I said, no, New Orleans. And he said, what, New Orleans? And the answer was New
New
Orleans.
Orleans. Wow.
I mean, when you listen to Louis Armstrong sing,
Right.
I mean, you think about the history of recorded music for black people
Right.
in America.
Right.
How many times have you heard a black person say the word birds, boyds,
Oh. Yeah.
the boyds in the trees?
Right.
I heard
Right.
Jimmy Durante say something like that on a TV show in the 1970s.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's it's Sicilian. I mean, those
Yeah.
musicians were all hanging out with each other,
Right.
and in the city at that time. I mean, they were all living around each other and on top of each other,
Mm.
and especially before, when it was the Louisiana Territory, and it was owned by France.
Right. Right.
And it was owned by France until 1804.
Yeah.
So by then, the social traditions were already kind of set.
Yeah.
And of course, as soon as it became a possession of the United States, de facto segregation was just everywhere.
Right. Right.
So, freed black people couldn't live. They had to get their own community and live over there.
Right. Right.
There was still slavery, but there were a lot of freed blacks. And then there were Creoles of color,
Right.
and then the Creoles had to live over here. And it became a very complicated thing. Overnight, Creoles became black.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before 1804, 1802, I think it's 1804 though. I could be, but before then, Creoles had their own
Their own
status.
thing. Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
their own status,
Mm.
and
That's crazy.
that ended when the United States showed up,
Mm.
and it helped music. I mean, it's not a coincidence that if you look at old videos of uh, traditional New Orleans players, all the clarinet players are light-skinned blacks,
Wow.
because there was a tradition of Creoles playing classical music.
Right.
and all of these there were generations of Creoles who were like fantastic clarinet players, and they introduced the idea of the arpeggio as a musical solution in New Orleans music.
That's incredible.
You know, the guys who were descendants of slaves never heard of a damn arpeggio.
Right.
You know, and then the clarinet players came in. They all had French names. You know,
Sidney Bechet.
Bechet, Baquet. Of course, not that you now I can't remember them, but you know, there's so many of these guys. Alphonse Picou.
Hello.
You know,
Yeah.
there's all these guys, and they're the ones who, because when Winton and I started doing this thing where we would play at the same time,
Right.
there were a lot of musicians emulating that.
Mm.
And they would say, well, man, how do you guys do that? They say, well, you have to understand the system. That's, you know, the reason it doesn't work because you guys are playing the same idea at the same time. So you're running into each other constantly
Right.
with all of this vertical linear motion, chromatic linear motion.
Right.
But if Winton's playing this way, I'm playing that way. That's why it works.
Yeah.
So if he's playing a melodic line, I'm playing arpeggios and I'm playing rhythms. So they don't interfere with his line. And then when he starts playing rhythms, then I start playing vertically. So you
Right.
have to listen to one another and you have to react to one another, not just play some regurgitated licks at the same time. It just sounds like a bunch of people literally like, you know, three people having different conversations at the same time.
Playing next to each other, but not with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well
yeah.
said.
That
So
makes-
so you know the historical fortune of Creoles having a certain sort of status that allowed them to train classically, and then America showing up and forcing them to be Negroes 100% meant that if they were going to play music, they had to play jazz.
Right.
Because the orchestra thing was over.
Yeah.
And so that brought a certain liveness to the sound that wasn't there prior to that.
That's incredible. That is incredible. And it's an incredible breakdown of that whole situation and influence and whatnot. And history, let's not forget. I had never even thought of that. Needless to say, I didn't know about that. That is an incredible thing. Listen, there's one thing that I wanted to speak to with you about, and that was comes back to our first point of the people of New Orleans and bringing it into today. A couple of years ago, just to give you the background, I had the good fortune to play Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill with Audra McDonald, right?
Right.
Wynton came to the show, Del Feo came to the show, Sheila Jordan came to the show. I don't think anyone recognized her, but I did recognize her.
Right.
And Joe Walsh from the
Right.
from Chicago, from the Eagles came to the
Right.
show. Nobody recognized him.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, we played that show here in New York. HBO picked it up and we made a movie of it in New Orleans, which meant that we had to go to New Orleans for a week at the Café Brazil on Frenchman Street and record the same show basically in front
Yeah, it
of
was a
an
great
audience.
show. I saw it. It was
Oh,
great.
thank you.
Great.
So in front of an audience, part of that audience was actors, of course, but that was maybe a third, and then 2/3 of the audience were people from New Orleans who bought tickets to see the show, right? There were certain, and my question or my proposition right now is New Orleans is a city of live music, okay? It is completely normal for people in New Orleans to have a 9 to 5, go home, have dinner, take a shower, go out with the express purpose of listening to a band, right?
Yeah.
At least that was my
Sometimes.
as a total outsider, that was my impression.
I think the majority of the time,
Okay.
they're not really listening to the band,
Well,
but they want it there.
Okay.
They want it there. And I mean, I learned a lot of things when I left New Orleans because I didn't grow up with the internet.
All right.
So I can Google and say, life in Wien. And then there's
Right.
all these videos that come up and people talking and they're speaking, Austrian German. And
Right.
there's nothing.
Right.
It's a book you can buy with some pictures in it. So I didn't know how people in New York lived. I didn't know how people in Boston lived.
Right.
And what I did not know was that the majority of the American cities had created designated areas where nightclubs could exist.
Mm. Check that out.
Because
Okay.
if you would think about New Orleans, nightclubs are all over the city,
Everywhere.
in the city, next to homes, next to where people live.
Right.
So there's always a certain kind of noise
Mm.
going on all the time that you get used to.
Right.
So whether it's even somebody outside playing the stereo real loud and singing at 2 o'clock in the morning, you go to sleep to that. You don't
Yeah.
call the cops on that.
No.
And Tipitina's is in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
There are
Uptown.
various bars in the city. And the two things that are interesting about the bars is that all the bars are converted houses.
That's
So they're
true.
not designed as bars, they become bars.
Right.
They're grocery stores that are converted houses. They're
Right.
all these unique things. And in these bars, they hire bands. And a lot of time people stand outside in the street drinking outside, but the band is going on and they're reacting to the band in their own way.
Right.
They're not seated checking it out like they would have done, for Lady Day.
Right. Of course.
You know,
Well,
but they have the propensity to do that as well.
Right. Let me just add to that, because there was this one thing that I noticed about the audience, the difference in audience from New York to New Orleans, right? We tried with the show, we tried to really recreate a sound of a particular time period and a sound of a particular city, in that case Philadelphia, right? Philadelphia 1959, how would a trio sound? Right? Let's recreate that and let's be as specific as possible, right? So we're not just playing tunes, not just walking through changes or any of that, right? Having done that, I would add certain parts to my bass lines that were very deliberately chosen to recreate a mood, recreate an era, etc., etc. I would play that in New York, and people were like, "Yeah, this is nice. This swings. This is." Well, sophisticated, right?
Right.
Play the same line in New Orleans, and the place would light up.
Yeah, they react to it.
They react to it.
Go ahead, bass man.
Exactly.
I hear you, bass man.
There you go.
Yeah,
it was. There was not even a doubt in, like, they understood exactly what I was trying to tell, what I was trying to say emotionally with a particular line, right?
It's a loud culture, man.
Yeah.
One of my favorite consistent stories, and in the last 40 years, it's happened 5 times, and it's people on airplanes seeing me wearing the New Orleans Saints football logo.
Right.
Then they ask me, "Are you from New Orleans?" And I say yes, and they say, "Man, I went to a Saints game. They're for their team from Minnesota. One was from San Francisco. One was from Chicago." And sometimes the Saints would win, sometimes the Saints would lose.
Right.
And they just said, "These fans harassed me the entire game, but in a way that I'm not used to. They were just teasing me." They were teasing me. They weren't, because like you go to a game in New York and you wear Patriot stuff, they throw beer on you. There's just it's like a certain level of like ignorance that's involved with this that I don't personally understand, because I'm from New Orleans.
Right.
And they all say, and then after the game, they took me out and got me out drank till 2 a.m. I mean, nobody does that. Where you from, man? Oh, you got to come out with us when the game's over. I mean, and the Saints will win. Even if they lose, they're like, come on. I love that place, man. It's just a loud, boisterous culture. It's amazing. And that comes out in the music.
Yeah, most definitely. There's no doubt about it.
There's a social outwardness.
Yeah.
Where in modern music, and particularly in jazz, the music is reflected of a certain kind of social inwardness.
Right.
The music has this kind of, it's highly intelligent music, but it's not laugh out loud music. And the musicians aren't laugh out loud people. They're very shy or very introverted.
Right.
And New Orleans is a city full of extroverts.
Yes.
Full of them. It don't matter. Insurance salesmen,
Makes
fishermen.
no difference. Yeah.
It makes no damn difference. Lawyers.
Yeah.
just loud, boisterous, funny people who love life.
Right. Right, that is very true. There's one interview that I listened to with you. I believe it was on Eric Krasno's
Oh,
podcast.
Kraz's thing, yeah.
Yeah, where you talk about New Orleans, and that's kind of why I wanted that spurred me on to contact you about this subject. Because you did say that you cannot hide in New Orleans. You're putting, I'm paraphrasing, of course, and probably
Well, I don't even remember what I said, bro. So it's cool.
Okay,
Whatever you say, I believe it.
You said exactly that.
Yeah, right. Okay, sure. Let's go play golf.
Okay. It's gonna be really boring. I'm just saying.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
We'll
I'm saying, but that's a good idea. But no, you did say that there were no inhibitions, right? And the possibility of and people, and you kind of made the arc in the interview of the personalities of people from New Orleans into your band, meaning that you guys really like playing with each other and you get along.
A good time.
Right.
We have a good time.
So, and I thought that was just a really interesting way of typifying, like, this is what an ensemble is supposed to be like. You're supposed to like being around each other and play with each other,
and like playing music. And even if you don't, you gotta fake it, bro. You gotta pretend. I mean, people hear music with their eyes in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, the operative verb in the United States for music is not listen or hear; it's see.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing you tonight.
Yeah.
That's a clue.
Right.
So you got to give them something to see. Well, we don't dance.
Right.
We don't have a light show.
Right.
We don't have very attractive women dancing behind us. So what is there to see?
Right.
4 people on the stage.
Right.
And if those 4 people treat each other with a certain level of social disinterest, then to the people watching, the music is disinteresting.
Right. Right.
It's uninteresting. I mean, yeah, it's uninteresting. I mean,
right.
Because it doesn't matter what you're playing, and as musicians, yeah, we have this message that we have, and it's a musical message. But for the people that pay money, the delivery is equally important.
Yeah.
And, and they care more about the delivery sometimes than they do about the message.
Yeah.
And if the message is, we're just gonna come on stage and play some tunes and we're like magicians. Okay, this is a happy tune. Okay, this is a sad tune.
Exactly.
Like, oh my God, how do they do that?
Yeah.
It sounds sad. I mean,
Right.
it's not. Now, if you're saying, well, what we're doing on this song is trying to reconcile the changes to giant steps with the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, yeah.
Ooh.
Who wants to hear that shit?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody.
Yeah. No doubt about that. No, fantastic. This that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, like, this is, in my opinion, an extension of the sound of New Orleans, right? Because it carries on again, like, through the people. A city, a place is, and this is something that I feel very strongly about. A city, a place is its people. It carries through its people into wherever you might find it. Listen, Branford Marsalis, once again, I cannot thank you enough. I really appreciate your time here with me. This has been very, very illuminating.
Call Donald Harrison. I'll send you his info, because
Sure.
especially if you want to talk about the Black Indians.
Okay.
He plays jazz and he's a big.
I know. I played with him.
Donald knows.
We had a legendary fight.
Oh, okay. But I'm not surprised by that either.
Yes,
I'm not surprised. Donald has that in him. But
it was.
He's still a great source of information.
I will gladly talk with him. There's
Cool.
no doubt about that.
Cool.
I'll gladly talk to Herlin Riley. I'll try to
Yeah. Erlen knows it too.
Actually, there was one thing that I wanted to ask you. To
Mhm.
kind of finish this off. If people want to get into the sound of New Orleans, what do you suggest listening to? What do you suggest to listen to?
I mean, everything.
Everything.
Listen to early King Oliver, like the Creole Jazz Band. Listen to Louis Prima from the 50s, because they got a lot of New Orleans in that sound, because he's from New Orleans too.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Louis Prima's from New Orleans.
Wow.
And like that big hit for Benny Goodman, "Sing Sing Sing."
Yeah.
If you, it's New Orleans, man.
Mm.
Now they play it because it was not it. You slow it down and it's a straight up Crescent City kind of thing.
Right.
And then you get to the 50s. So that was when the New Orleans sound was just everywhere. You
Right.
know, Eddie Bo, the Fat Man, Fats Domino,
Mm.
Tenor Man, Herb Hardesty, Lee Dorsey,
Yeah.
uh, Professor Longhair, James Booker. That's later.
Yeah.
James Booker, of course. The Meters,
Yeah.
the the Meters.
It's a deep band.
And
Yeah.
eventually the Neville brothers and early, early Aaron Neville, like "Tell It Like It Is," like
Yeah.
that period. It was amazing how many of the hit records came out of New Orleans
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
no doubt.
I'm forgetting people, but and then there's the Wild Choppertoulis made a couple of records. So you
Yeah.
can check out the Wild Choppertoulis.
Yeah.
And Dr. John,
Dr. John, Alan Toussaint.
Alan Toussaint,
Yeah.
Alan, as we say, Alan Toussaint,
Toussaint. Yeah.
Alan Toussaint. Yeah, and he produced a lot of stuff,
Right.
like that. What was that song? Like there was a song by the Staple Singers called "Yes We Can."
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know we can. Well, that's a Lee Dorsey tune, and Lee had recorded it prior.
Get out.
Because if you hear it, listen to the bass line. Doom, doom, ba doom, ba doom, boom, boom, boom. That's New Orleans shit.
That's New Orleans. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No doubt.
And it's funky as hell. And Lee's version is funky. I mean, it's funky.
It's incredible. Well, listen, I mean, once again, Branford Marsalis, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate our time together and you sharing this insight and this information is invaluable.
And don't forget about the brass bands.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, go for it. Go for it.
The Dirty Dozen, the High Eight. What's Kermit Ruffin's band called? Man, it's hard getting old. You forget stuff. They, but the brass band, the modern brass bands are great.
There's one brass band that I went to check out called the Soul Rebels.
Soul Rebels are my boys. So yeah.
Oh, check that out. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I love
Yeah,
them.
I saw them at Le Bon Temps Roulé.
Yeah, Le Bon Temps Roulé, man, over down Magazine Street.
Yep. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was, I mean, full on brass band about this much away from the audience, playing at full volume, and you don't ever want it to stop. That's how good it was, and that's how good it felt, right?
Yeah, they're great. They're a great band.
I mean, it doesn't get any better, and having those two drummers divide the drum set up between two people and yet sound as one.
Well, yeah, that's the trad. I mean, the brass bands, the original brass bands.
That is
a snare drum player.
Yeah.
And a bass drum player. And the bass drum had a little tiny cymbal that he would play with a coat hanger because it had this swishy sound that you couldn't get with a drumstick.
Crazy.
And they have the same thing, except they don't play a bass drum. I think he plays a tenor drum, which is a marching band.
Okay. Okay.
He doesn't play the big bass drum. He plays a tenor drum.
Yeah. Yeah.
With a microphone to create the low end.
Right.
And then the snare drum. Yeah.
It was incredible. No, it was incredible. I've been around drummers my entire life, literally my entire life.
Right.
I've never experienced anything like that, where two people sound like one.
Right.
And if you close your eyes, you hear a drum set drummer, right?
Right. Well, they understand. I think with a lot of guys that play music now, they don't. And I ask the question to my students, to everybody, and I say, well, what do you think your function is in the band? And they go, what? It never occurred to them that they had one. You can't have two people playing together if they don't understand what their function is. Because then they can't play they can't be two as one.
Right.
They're just two as individuals.
Right.
You play what you want, and I play what I want.
Yeah.
But the snare drummer understands there's certain things he can play and certain things he should not play. And the tenor drum player understands that as well. And that's why they play so well together. Right. They don't run into each other. They understand their function.
Like Wynton and you know,
Yeah.
playing
Yeah, you
lines and
understand the
playing
function.
arpeggios and rhythms and all of that.
You
Yeah.
understand the function.
Yeah, yeah,
Play
yeah,
with
yeah.
singers, you understand your function. You got to know when not to play. That's
Yeah.
almost important, is knowing what to play.
Yeah. Very
Know
much
when to
so.
keep your mouth closed.
Exactly. Exactly. On that note, let me shut up.
Me too, bro. All right, Big George.
All right, listen, thank you so much, Branford.
Pleasure,
stay
bro.
safe, stay sane out there. Much love to the family.
Yes,
You
sir.
know, and it seems like we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and
Yeah.
you know, hopefully we'll get to hang out in person at some point.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I get to the city.
Please do, by all means.
Cool.
All right, thanks again.
Yes, sir.
Later.